It's time now for County-Wide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Brad Miller as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives here in Yavapai County. And now, here's today's County-Wide.
Well, good day and welcome to the program. It is County-Wide. Brad Miller with you, and we're happy to welcome into studio a first-time guest with us. From Chapter 5, a 12-step recovery home and outreach program operating out of the Prescott area primarily, is Gwen Henderson, and we say hello to you.
Hello.
Good to have you here on this gorgeous October day.
It's good to be here. Thank you, Brad.
We appreciate you taking your time. Just not terribly long ago, some of our radio listeners might recall Gwen talking at one of the remote broadcasts we did at a special event.
Yes.
That was in Prescott here,
Yes.
maybe a month or so ago. And you told some really interesting stories as kind of a spokesperson, if you will, for Chapter 5. And as we said, it's a 12-step recovery program operating out of Prescott. And so I would think there'd be an awful lot of interesting stories, but yours especially so. And you've become pretty deeply involved in Chapter 5.
I have in Chapter 5 and around in Prescott working with different agencies. I came from Chicago about 8 years ago, and I came out here and I thought I was just going to do a little bit of research and then go back home. Well, that didn't happen. I wound up at Chapter 5, about 4 or 5 years ago to help implement a women's program because Chapter 5 was historically a men's program. Okay. And once the women's program was implemented and became very successful, Chapter 5, we just started to explore all of those amazing options that were out there that could reach and touch so many people. We now have our intensive outpatient program as well as our outpatient program. But again, coming here 8 years ago with just the intention of getting some research and going back home, right. It did not play out that way.
Didn't take. We've talked with guests and anybody I think in our audience who's been here for sure any more than a few months will have a similar story or know someone who does, where there's something about this area that pulls you in, and then you kind of find another niche.
It is an amazingly healing and compassionate environment. We found that a lot of people actually gravitate to Prescott for recovery. It's becoming widely known as the recovery capital of the West. Identifying with my population because 15 years ago, I also reached out and a hand reached in and helped me walk through a very difficult journey, very, very similar to the population I serve. And what I found is when I got here in Prescott, I was embraced even more, not only because I worked in the field, but because I had an identification with the population that we served. And so it became very warm. It became very compassionate. Now I can't actually see myself being anywhere other than at Prescott, in Prescott with Chapter 5.
Seems right.
Seems right.
Gwen, now let me ask you this, and I don't mean to pry into your background, but you kind of introduced this. But what I want to ask is you've been down a few long roads.
Yes.
How hard was it to get to the point? People talk about rock bottom and some of those, I don't know if they're cliche phrases or if they're legitimate, but where you need to find a certain something that flips that switch that causes you to seek help. Can you tell us how that happened for you?
Well, I was 42 years old. I think my age had a lot to do with it at the time. That was 15 years ago. But I did get to a place where I just felt empty inside. I did not know what had happened. I'd come from a very successful family, very successful background, and I did not know what happened. All of a sudden, I saw myself in a very dark place and not able to maneuver out, addicted, to alcohol and other substances. However, when I really was serious, when the pain became greater than the desire, there was someone on the other side waiting for me to walk me through it. They believed in me. They guided me. They loved me till I could love myself. Yes, they were stern. They used the phrase, suit up, show up, shut up, take directions. I got it. However, it guided me with baby steps. I learned how to believe in myself, how to trust in myself. And when I saw in my peers, and that's really very important at Chapter 5 too, because we're a mirror of one another. So when I saw in my peers their growth, their success, and even some of their backslides, it helped me to keep moving forward.
It all feeds that positive movement.
It's very altruistic at first, you know, for me. I came in this with I wanted to initially learn how to maintain sobriety. Getting sober was easy, staying sober is not. That was my initial carrot to come into the field, to hold myself accountable. However, what kept me here was when I saw other people's eyes start to change, when I saw hope, when I saw people start to reunite with their children, with their family, become citizens, and start to give back again. And it just hooks you. So there's an altruistic value here as well. And being a person that identifies with them, it allows me to know that, wow, they can do it, I can keep doing it. And
we hear that phrase, you know, getting your life back. I've heard it. We've talked with any number of groups that have a similar mission to Chapter 5. And that's one of the commonalities, I think, that runs through it. But here again, understanding, did you realize you were missing out on all of those things?
I didn't until all of those things were gone.
Okay.
And I found myself in a very dark place and lost.
Right.
And again, with the population we serve at Chapter 5, we actually identify with them and we say, we do get it. We understand. However, this is a promise. You will get your life back.
Sure. You said I hope I say it the right way. Getting sober is easy. Staying sober is hard.
Yes.
Is that common and I'm sorry, but do we say patients, clients? I don't know how to refer to the folks that become.
It's depending on the agency, because there's so many various agencies in Prescott. And when you have a pure clinical facility, they will say clients. At Chapter 5 in our residential portion, we say guests.
Guests.
However, in our intensive outpatient and our outpatient classes, which is a clinical component, we now have a clinical service, we say clients.
Gotcha. Okay.
We don't use the word patient.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And I apologize.
But some people, that's okay. Some people will say residents. Some people will say clients.
Okay.
And we say guests for our residential.
Okay. Of the guests, then, is that common for all guests, that feeling of getting sober and staying sober? I remember years ago we had a young man who, and he was a teen, who'd had addiction problems, and he talked during the conversation on this program a number of times, quite a few times, frankly, about backsliding and that kind of fall off the wagon kind of thing. Do you teach? Does Chapter? Do you understand where I'm coming from with that? And is that something that guests should expect as they go through this process?
I don't know if they expect it. What I do know is many of our guests, as well as our clients, have had many attempts at sobriety. So at this point, they're very much aware that I can stop my addictive behavior.
Sure.
Now I need help with understanding how to stay stopped, with developing the necessary tools that they would need to continue on in their life with some support.
Right.
Okay? That is vitally important. At Chapter 5, we have what is called a peer-driven community. And in that peer-driven community, again, it's almost as if it's a mirror. We actually motivate one another to keep moving in a particular direction, as well as we recognize in one another when, in fact, somebody might be slipping a little further back into their old ways. And we actually help them. We bring it to their attention. And so it works tremendously. And when you couple the intensive outpatient and the outpatient services with it, and we do one-on-one individual sessions, when you couple that with it where they could get down to the core of what's going on, because a lot of times the alcohol and drugs are just a symptom.
Yeah.
So now we're getting to the core. And as we start to identify it, as some say, peel that onion back, in a supported, structured, loving environment like our 26-week residential program, guess what? They got that whole spectrum of arms wrapped around them while they're being guided through. And they develop healthy habits. They develop healthy habits with eating right, sleeping right, taking care of themselves, and giving back to one another. And that becomes their norm.
So as I understand it, so many times with addiction, whatever it may be, all those other things, as you just said, fall off. Job, family, eating, it's simple as that. What time to get up in the morning,
Exactly.
and on and on and on. And I guess as you I don't say modify that behavior, but repair that behavior, it just seems like the entire world's going to light back up for you.
It does, and it becomes more simplified as well. We are taught and we learn and we encourage how to simplify your life, how to get a good night's sleep, how to eat healthy, how to exercise, how to allow yourself to, with baby steps, get to a place of trust so someone can meet you where you are. And that's what our clinical team with our intensive outpatient program does, as well as our program managers with our housing component.
You look at the big picture.
Yes, we do.
I need to interrupt you. I hate to, because I'm very interested, and we'll continue with Gwen Henderson in just a moment. We do need to take a break. It's Countywide, and we're back right after this.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
I was in junior high the first time I caught my mom using denial. She had to have known her painkillers were missing because I kept stealing them. Her denial was so out of hand.
So she doesn't even know? I'm going out.
It was like I could get away with anything.
You kids have fun.
And that was when I knew. And she was addicted to denial.
Denial is a drug. Get help. The partnership at drugfree.org.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
Now, some action from the courts. Billie Jean King renewing her rivalry with Arthritis. First set, furious volley, and right to the net for a winner. Beautiful forehand there. Arthritis, stunned. And here, match point. Billie Jean with the ace, taking it in straight sets. Afterwards, a jubilant Billie Jean King.
Tennis is a weapon for me with arthritis. There's nothing like it for me to hit a ball, run to the ball, anytime, any court. I'm ready. Let's go.
What's your weapon against arthritis? Find out at fightarthritispain.org.
Welcome back to the program. It's Countywide again. Gwen Henderson is our guest today. Chapter 5, 12-Step Recovery Homes. Here's the phone number. If you're driving down the road, listening to the show on the radio, watching on television today, the number to call, and you need help, or you know someone who does. I'm going to ask Gwen about that in a moment. But the number is 888-541-0690, and online at Chapter 5, that'll be the word chapter with the letter, the numeral, rather, 5, recovery. So chapter5recovery.com. You can call the radio station, of course, anytime and get that information if you missed it during our broadcast. Let's talk about that person right now who's going to work or is in some kind of whatever the situation, or my son or daughter or my husband is perhaps needing the help that Chapter 5 offers. Do I pick up that phone? Does it start that simple?
It does start that simple. You can pick that phone up. We get a lot of phone calls from family members to be in the initial contact because they have so many questions. What we'll do is we'll identify some characteristics that they see that their loved ones are have occurred, or they may be depressed. Their eating habits may have changed. They may not be sleeping. They may be defensive. All of these signs that may occur, they start to recognize. And what we will do is we will do a brief interview with the parents to get some background or the loved one. But ideally, we need to talk to the person.
Sure.
Because we need to gauge that person's willingness. When they call the 188 number, they have the initial person that really talks about Chapter 5 and all the different layers of services that we have to identify which would be the best service for that particular individual. Once that is determined, which is very brief but very detailed, then that person would actually either speak directly with one of the program managers, the women's program manager or men's program manager, set up a date and a time for them to come in to do their initial intake. And if in fact, which we strongly encourage, that they participate in the intensive outpatient as well as the outpatient clinical services, they will get an assessment, an intake assessment, which will uncover the diagnostics, so we can make sure that they're getting the appropriate level of clinical care they need while they're engaged in the 26-week housing program as well.
Now, I want to explore that a tiny bit. When we say levels, what does that mean? Is medication involved? Counseling? All of the above?
Counseling is involved, okay? If in fact we do work, we do outsource with the psychiatric team in Prescott, and that's the other good thing about Prescott, we all work together.
Sure.
However, what we're looking for is at what level of readiness they are to participate in our clinical services. If they're coming from a traditional 30-day treatment facility, they're usually very ready to go into the intensive outpatient program, which is for 6 weeks. And then they transition right into our outpatient program, which is a minimum of 6 weeks, but it can run a little bit longer depending on their progress or lack thereof. And again, we wrap it around with not just the 26-week housing program, but our traditional housing program that comes later on down the line. A lot of our guests realize, well, we need a little bit more time there, and what we've learned is the longer the engagement, coupled with not only the structured living environment, but the clinical pieces as well, the greater the outcome. So if we can keep them engaged in that peer-to-peer program, again, that's that mirror for them, give them those clinical services where they identify the problems and get down to the core, and that happens too with individual counseling, and then continue on into a higher level of housing, or I should say a lower level of housing, transitional, their chances of success are really very good. And coupled with the love and the support from Prescott and all of the 12-step communities there, the recovery community there, if they hang in there, and most of them do, we have success stories with a lot of our guests with 5+ years of maintained sobriety.
Now tell me about that. You say most of them do. There's going to be some folks that, for whatever reason, doesn't kind of go. You say most of them do. It sounds like a pretty good track record.
It is a
for
pretty
Chapter
good track.
5. Okay.
We do have a high percentage, and not just to. And I don't want to throw out a percentage number,
That's
but
fine.
I will say we do have a very high percentage of individuals that come through our program. They maintain their sobriety because, one, they stayed in the program throughout its duration and maybe even a little longer in the transitional apartments, which is called the next chapter. But more importantly, they stay connected to Chapter 5 as alumni.
I want to ask, we need to take another break, so we're going to do that, but I want to really super hit the fast forward button here.
Okay.
You know, we're talking about 26 weeks and what that'll entail. I want to come to the end of that and talk about, because to me it seems it could be very difficult to make that call and come in. Once you get into the program, it seems like you're going to find a secure climate. It could be very frightening and challenging, it seems to me, to be spit out and get back into that previous world you existed. I want to talk to you about that when we come back from the break. Gwen Henderson is with Chapter 5. We'll come back to Countywide right after this.
Having a fire escape plan is very important to keep your family safe and together in the event of a fire. When you awake to the sound of a smoke detector and smoke in your room, don't stand straight up. Carefully roll off your bed and stay low under the smoke. If your door is shut, feel the door with the back of your hand. Slowly open the door if no heat is felt. Always stay low until you get to the outside of your home. Always have 2 ways out of your house and a specified meeting place somewhere outside your home. Home escape plans should be drawn up and rehearsed on a regular basis. This could be the difference between life and death if caught in a fire.
Yes, ready. Go get it.
Oh, come on, Randy. Animal shelter, here I come. And no, I'm not crazy or emotionally damaged. That's a stereotype. I just belong to a total loser. I'm a good dog. So if you want a pet, adopt. And if you see Randy, tell him he dropped his wallet.
Fire can happen at any time. What would you try to save?
My family photos.
My grandfather's war memorabilia.
My dogs.
I'm firefighter Brandon Wacker with the Cotton Fire Department. A working smoke detector is your best defense in the event of a fire. Make sure you have a smoke detector in every room except your kitchen. Test them monthly and change the battery once a year. Take the time to save the things you can't replace.
It's easy to tell if you've had way too many. But what if you've had just one too many? Buzz driving is drunk driving.
Welcome back to the program. Our final segment today with Gwen Henderson. Chapter 5, 12-Step Recovery Homes based in Prescott, 888-541-0690. And that'll be a good number to call, not just about questions about the program itself, costs, insurance, things like that. That's, Gwen, that's a good way to start, is that number.
Yes.
And then chapter5recovery.com, the 5 written as a numeral, so chapter5recovery.com. Take a look online and find more information about this terrific program. The question I asked before the break, it, I'm assuming, can be frightening to kind of come into this world shaky and needing help. This world being Chapter 5, going through this program, meeting people that I'm sure you become very endeared to, who have helped you out of a huge problem. But it can be just as scary, it would seem. Little bird fly out of the nest now, is it?
It is, because when they first come in, of course, they are frightened and they are scared and they don't know what's going to happen. And so all of a sudden, about 2 to 3 months in it, they find this groove, this comfort level, this trust with their peers, with their clinicians, with their counselors, right there at Chapter 5. And then 26 weeks is over. Now what? Right. There's that big question. Now what? Well, we have what is called the next chapter. And it is an apartment living environment. And it is sober living, it is structured living, so they don't have to just get thrown right back into mainstream living if they're not quite prepared for it, even if they want to continue with their outpatient services there. They can come in and sign a 3 or 6 month lease. We have had individuals stay up to 2 years in the apartment because we do want to meet them where they are with their level of readiness. We do not want to throw someone back out there. However, and they're not ready. However, the people that do transition back out, whether it's after the 26 weeks or if they do continue to live in our transitional apartments, we still have a very strong alumni base. So they stay connected through the alumni base. They come back to Chapter 5. We have many women that come back and be of service to Chapter 5 as well as men. Sure. So they keep that connection with their home base, and they build from that, because they become very ingrained in the community, in the recovery community. So they actually help the newcomers at Chapter 5, get out into the community, get into the recovery areas, to the meetings, do a lot of social recovery activities. But again, because Chapter 5 has just a seamless continuum of care from the 26-week program to the IOP, to the intensive outpatient, that's IOP, to the outpatient, to the transitional living apartments, which are simply beautiful.
Something to help every step of the way.
Every step of the way. Get them reintroduced back into living, and not just living sober, but living happy.
That's what it's about. Gwen, we thank you so much, not only for being a guest on our show today, for what you do over there.
Thank you.
For the whole bunch of folks at Chapter 5. Again, the phone number is 888-541-0690, online at chapter5recovery.com. That first important step, be the biggest one, and maybe the hardest one, but after that you'll end up where Kim is today, perhaps. We thank you again. Good to talk to you.
Thank you.
All right, it's Countywide. We'll see you next time.
This has been Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Listen in each Tuesday and Thursday as we tackle the hot topics and talk to the decision makers across Yavapai County. That's Countywide with Brad Miller and Paul David each Tuesday and Thursday on this Yavapai Broadcasting station.